All right. We're kicked over. We're good to go. I think. I think I've done this right. Again, I'm
I
no pro at this.
I have Twitch open in the other window and I do see us, so
Excellent. Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. Maybe it's Sunday, maybe it's morning. For me, it is. Happy morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is you are. Uh, I'm Spencer Campbell. This is Coffee Break. Coffee Break is a weekly hangout time for me and my awesome cool friends and people I know in the indie RPG scene. It's a time for me to just catch up and hang out with people. It's not like an interview show. It's just kind of we're gonna hang out and just talking about whatever, and folks are encouraged to hang out and talk and chat with us as well. And this week I've got Riley with me. Riley, why don't you introduce yourself to the fine folks at home if somehow they don't know who you are?
hi, I'm Riley Rethal. I design games sometimes. Um, you can find my Twitter at Riley Rethal. I don't know if I'll be talking in the chat, but it's my old Twitter at, which is JSatX. So if you see that, that's me.
Yes, I remember learning that during one of my design streams. I was like, somebody's here, and they feel familiar, and then that always happens to me on Twitch. Uh, well, awesome. I mean, how the heck are you? You said you sometimes design games. Are you in that space right now? Are you designing anything?
I right now I'm kind of in like a mood where I'll like think of a game idea and then I'll like work on it for a day and then I'll just like get bored of it and like go to something else.
Yep, sounds about right.
Um, so like I feel like I have phases of that where it's like I'll have like a moment where like I'm working on something and I'm just like focused on it, and then like when that's done or like when I've like hit the limit with that, it's like okay, now it's for me just like hopping around and doing nonsense.
I'm so flighty right now with my stuff. I cannot for the
Because
life
all the birds.
because all the birds, because everything I do is bird related. So I feel like I just have to embody my games. Um, it's like I don't know. I can't. I tried to make a project design plan that planned out months at a time because I was like,
That could not be me.
let me just try and do this. And I was pretty confident in the list that I put together. And then I immediately the next week had already deviated. I was like, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this instead. And it wasn't even part of my plan. So I don't know. I for the life of me, right now I'm all over the place and I cannot focus on what I want to work on next. That's just where I'm at.
Yeah, yeah. There's a reason that I don't want to ever do games as like my full time try to make a living thing, because
Right.
like the thing that I really love about it is that like game design is like one of very few things where like I genuinely really love to do it when I do it, and like I consistently go back to it. So like the idea of like trying to make a plan and be like, okay, I have to like stay on this regimented schedule. It's like that would just burn me out, and like what's the point of that?
I see. I gotta remember that because I'm the same way, and I decided to try to add structure when chaos is where I thrive in the design space. Because I don't like. I'm not a very good planner. I've never been a highly planning focused sort of person. So when I put together this plan, it made it unfun for me, right? Like I
Yeah.
was just like, I don't. This is now work as opposed to this cool thing that I get to do in fits and bursts whenever my brain decides to behave and do that stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I thrive in structure, but I need the structure so I can like subvert it. Like I'm one of those. I was thinking about this Tumblr post recently where it's like, "Oh, my cat likes to only drink from cups of water that I've drank from first because he thinks he's being naughty." So like I just have made a designated cup where the cat will see me drink from it, and then will drink from the cup, to get him to drink water. Um and then there's a reply that's like, God in the Garden of Eden. And I was like, that's me with game design. Like I like I tend to do really well, not just with game design, but a lot of things where like I need something to procrastinate on, right? Like
mm,
I need to like be in class and I should be paying attention to class, but suddenly I had this burst of
yes.
inspiration for a game or whatever.
That's so me. So once a month we have our college meetings. So I teach in psychology, so we're in the Department of Social Sciences and Education. So once a month we have a meeting of all the faculty. And those are the times where I'm just sitting there and I have my pen and paper. I'm like, it's time to do some game design because it's just like one committee after another is like going over the reports that we've all read already, but they've decided that they need to read it out loud. So I'm like, I'm getting it done. This is my time. So yes, I vibe with that. Well, somebody mentions the idea of game jams. Jams are awesome because it's chaos with a deadline. That's very true.
Love a game jam.
I haven't joined a jam in a little while. I like, I want to join Chris Bizet's random adventure jam, but I was talking with Dan Phipps last night. I'm so bad at writing adventures. I just can't. I just don't
Same.
like. My brain doesn't work that way. Like,
I've never done it.
I don't think I write like example missions or adventures in some of my books, but none of them feel good to me. Like none of them are like, yeah, I've really nailed what I want this game to feel like because I think the reason for me is because I don't plan anything. So I how the hell am I supposed to write an adventure if I don't plan my own sessions? Uh,
Yeah, the closest I've done to writing an adventure is there was a game jam a while ago for like trophy incursions,
mm-mm,
and I wrote something for that, which is but the thing about trophy incursions is a lot of it is about setting up characters. And then
yeah.
I took that and I said, what if I made this even more just like writing playbooks? And then I wrote some like pick lists for the different but I
Oh.
basically took like the like more adventure-y, but a little bit more like, oh, here's some like vibes. And then I said, what if I made this even more like BOB?
Was it the Trophy Dark or Trophy Gold like incursion jam or something like that? Was the thing that you wrote for Trophy Dark or Gold? I wrote something for Gold, I think, as part of like a contest a long time ago.
Whichever one is like the one shot one. I
Oh,
don't.
Dark. Yeah, Trophy
Okay,
Dark.
yeah.
Nice. I did enjoy writing the trophy incursion. That was because that's different. Or if I don't know, maybe it isn't different, and for some reason I tricked myself into thinking it was different. But I did enjoy writing that. Now that I think about it.
I feel like it is a bit different, right? Because I mean, or at least it is a type of adventure. However you want to say it.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there obviously the line between like game and adventure is like blurry, anyways. But like maybe what you can come away with that is be like, okay, I like writing stuff that's like trophy incursion. How about I write my adventures for the things that I want to write more like that than like where you have like, oh, here's your objectives, here's the characters you can meet and stuff.
Riley, you've just cracked my brain right open. Like that's a really good way of. I think now I feel more confident in joining Chris's jam and trying because if I just write it as a trophy like incursion, even if it's not a one to one, if I take the things about that I like, I think you've done it.
Hell yeah.
I might take a stab at this. I say that and then watch. I'm gonna the second we're done with this, I'm gonna be distracted with something else. And I'll forget that we even had this life lesson.
I mean, fair enough.
So in terms of like so you and I have bonded recently over our love of the resistance system, and specifically because we have both made or are making games that are. Is it sparked by resistance? Is that what it
Yeah.
technically? Yeah, I always forget the phrase. Yeah, so sparked by resistance. So you're working on right now, on a sparked by resistance game,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Yeah.
do you mind telling folks just a little bit about it, or because I mean you've been sharing stuff on Twitter,
Oh,
so it's
yeah,
not
no,
like a
totally.
secret. Okay.
Yeah. So I am working on a as yet untitled game using the using the Spark by Resistance system. It's based on Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is a show that I watched a good bit of at the beginning of quarantine and then kind of stopped because I got frustrated with it. And then friends at the table started playing Heart in their new campaign, Song Fiel, which is very good. And it got me like kind of thinking about that system. And I don't even remember, like it was just like a random day in like June or July. And I think I had been talking to my friend about FMAP, which is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood for those who
Ah,
don't know. I had just been talking to a friend about it and like kind of what I wished it had done and like my problems with it and such. And then I was just kind of thinking like, I wonder if you could do a resistance system game like with FMAP and just like not like what I was thinking it would be more one of those like, oh, I'm gonna work on this for a little bit and then be like, nah, never mind. You know, it
Right.
felt very much like one of those. Like it wasn't the, like I had also been thinking like, ooh, what about a Spark by Resistance game for this book series I really liked in seventh grade, and like that went nowhere. Um, Shout out to Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians by Brandon Sanderson. I
Nice.
actually know. I actually recently someone in a Discord server I'm in is working on a PBTA game for that, which makes me very excited.
Oh, cool.
Um, but I just kind of like started like okay, what would the domains be? What would the skills be? And then I just kind of kept working on it, and I was like, oh no, oh no, am I gonna write this game? Which, come to think of it, I feel like that's how a lot of my bigger projects start. Like that's how when I started writing Venture, it was literally um, Taylor Labresh of Riverhouse
Mm.
Games did a game jam for All My Fantasy Children, which is a fantastic podcast where they kind of like create a fantasy world by like kind of going one character or place or whatever at a time. It's very cool. I really need to catch up on it. And I was like, man, I'd really like to like kind of make a little game about like taking fantasy tropes and kind of like twisting them the way that they do. And then I started working on it and I was like, oh no, this is going to be a whole thing. And then it was.
I went through that process when I first saw the resistance system, where I was like, I'm gonna just make everything with this now. Where I was like, yeah, I could make everything a resistance game. Where I bounced around from one idea to the next of like, could I convert this to a resistance game? Could I convert this to a resistance game? Like games that I had already made. I was like, it's time to change this into a resistance game. Excellent. We've already convinced Navi to go download the SRD.
Yeah.
Navi, you're gonna really like it. It's cool. Uh, I mean, you and Sean make cool stuff, Navi. So I think you will find the resistance system pretty neat, personally. Like, I'm curious what about the system jumps out to you. That is like, what's the stuff that got its claws into you? I because my first introduction to it was with Spire, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
Heart only recently came out, but Spire came out a few years ago, and I really loved Spire. Um, and then Heart added some stuff. Like Heart is resistance, but it also like did some different things. Some things that I like, some things that I don't like as much. So I'm curious, like, what about the system is like, what jumped out to you that you were like, yeah, this is the thing that like fits my thing that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I feel like some of the stuff that I originally was like, oh, this is like what the core of Heart is. Because like I wasn't, I should have, is this true? Did I start working on the game before I actually even like bought and read Heart? I think that's true. I
Mm,
think I started working on it just based on listening to friends at the table, which like very little had come out at that point. It was like the first couple arcs too. And reading the SRD, which is weird because that wasn't Heart. So
right.
like it's so like I was kind of a fool coming into it, but it's fine. It worked out. Um, I was really into like the resource idea,
Mm,
which is just a thing in Heart, and like I didn't realize that. And listening to it in Friends of the Table, I kind of thought it was going to be more of a thing.
right.
But then like as I kind of actually started working on the game, I was like, oh, I don't actually like resources. I don't think they have enough for me to like continue with them. So it's kind of hard to say like what originally jumped out at me.
Mm,
But the reason that I kept going with it is that I've always kind of been averse to like bigger bigger games, like that kind of thing. Like the biggest game I've written, I mean, at this point, the biggest game I have, like the biggest game doc that I have is FMAP game. But before that, and the one that's published is Galactic 2E,
mm,
which um, is like a GM-less game that like a lot of it is just kind of like it's it's not like a bunch of interlocking systems so much it is like here's some extra stuff you can do. And like I'm really proud of what I have in there, but you know, like I have tried and just not gotten very far at all trying to write, you know, like PBTA, Forge in the Dark. Like I've
yeah.
used a lot of things, I've used a lot of inspiration from those games, but I've never written like a full like PBTA ass game, you know?
Right.
And a big reason for that, especially PBTA, is that it feels like you have to keep so much in mind all the time because like I'm a very like mechanics focused person,
Mm,
and I really like when like all, I can look at the mechanics and like see how the game would go and feel like, oh, this like really creates something cool. And with PBTA it always feels like everything you write for a playbook kind of like has this domino effect with everything else because you have
Mm.
these moves that are like they do fictional things but also mechanical things, and so it just feels like there's so many like little interlocking things that it's so overwhelming, and like I just can't. It feels like the Gordian knot, and the only thing I can do is just like slice it, which means in my case like writing a little tiny thing, like Dusk to Midnight is PBTA, but it's just like, oh, what if you had 5 basic moves and that's it?
Right.
um, and same with Forge in the Dark, where like it just feels like a lot of interlocking systems that like obviously I feel like with Forge in the Dark, had I really wanted to write something, I could have like gone in and like really figured out like how it works,
Hmm.
but like I just never bothered to do that. um, but so working with the resistance system, it's like, okay, it is this like big campaign game where like you have all these different like advances and the characters have all this stuff, and it really like has a lot of possibility space, but the actual core mechanics of it are really simple.
Right.
Like all you have is you have your skills and domains, and then you have stress and fallout, and like that's it. You're just rolling the you're rolling the dice to see if you succeed or fail, or if you take stress. You take the stress, you can heal the stress, and like so I could very easily feel like, okay, I've got what these core mechanics are, and now I can just move to the playbooks, um, and like kind of add their own. So like each playbook, or a lot of the playbooks in this game, have their own kind of like systems that I've made more complicated, but I don't have to worry as much. I just have to worry about it kind of going into this like it feels kind of like a, oh my god, like what were those things you do in like middle school where like you make a, not a flow chart, like an idea web, right, where you have like the one in the middle, and like
Oh,
that's the core mechanic,
like in
and then everything else
yeah.
just kind of is reaching out once instead of being like all over the place.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I agree in like I started on PBTA games. Those were the first games that I played as like a role player. I didn't start with D&D.
Mm,
Um,
lucky you.
yeah, which was like lucky me, but also like I had in my head that PBTA games were like so simple and straightforward. And I think they are in some ways, but also in other ways, I think there's a lot of like a lot is asked of the player to understand things like fictional positioning and like the difference between mechanics and narrative and things like that that is like more difficult, I think, than we had initially thought, but we figured it out anyway. And then we moved into other things eventually. But Spire specifically, as the Resistance game that I started with, that's the straight. It's so straightforward to me. Um, the roll is slow though, which is why I did my whole like I'm gonna slice this down with my like resistance light thing. Like I do like that the roll is straightforward, but it also just takes so goddamn long to put together a roll in the resistance. Um, but the thing that so like that helped that was cool to me. The thing that jumped out to me a lot was also I like the idea of stress tracks. So like HP in different things essentially instead of just like you have your body HP and then like everything else we handle like fictionally. Instead you've got
Yeah.
like stress that's related to fictional things like your reputation, your ability to stay quiet, your money. Um, but the thing that jumps out to me the most is every class has all these cool powers, or playbook has all these cool powers that is just a button that says do this really cool thing. And every once in a while you get to push that button and feel really cool. And that's something that's just like I love that stuff. That's the stuff that jumps out to me because I try and put that into a lot of my games. And I felt like it was more obvious or easier to hit that button in resistance games than in other games that I had seen, where either you could like do it very rarely or it was more like an interpretation. Instead of just like, and here's this really awesome game-changing thing that you can do that says like, ah, fuck the mechanics. This is just your time to be awesome. I loved that.
Yeah, I also really like that. I think like now that I've kind of gotten really into writing stuff, I definitely do. I'm probably going to try to add a bit more like PBTA sensibility into it, where like,
Mm,
because I do sometimes want to make a role where it's like, oh, on a failure this happens, or like you can like, I do kind of miss the partial success
right.
in resistance. We'll see. I don't know. But yeah, I do also really like just being able to, especially stuff where it's like where there is kind of that like partial success added in, right? Where it's like, oh, you can once per session you can say, oh, this person is part of my spy organization. And
Mm-hmm.
then like automatically it's like, okay, one, they might help you, but two, that might fuck you over. Like they might hate you, or like you might screw up their mission, and then something,
Right.
stuff like that, where it's like you get to, I really like that the player kind of gets to be in charge of how they are approaching their character in that way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so much of how I run games anyway. Like a lot of the games that I run, even if it's not mechanically in it, like it's just like the players constantly feeding information into whatever it is that we're doing, like whatever the job is, the mission, the adventure. So like having mechanics in there where they can tangibly see like, oh, I'm going to create this place now, or like I have the ability to create this place or this person, and this is now just true. That's stuff that I like to do anyway as a GM. So having it in the game, woven into the fabric of it, is I love it. I love having that sort of stuff. So I'm all for it. I
Yeah,
shout that stuff off from the rooftops.
definitely. Yeah, and I also really like, at least a big goal for me with this, what I'm working on is I want to make sure that one, I'm not overloading the player with like a bunch of different stuff, and two, the player has a lot of choice in how much they want to do. Right, like what I'm trying to do for all of the classes that I'm writing is have stuff where the player can just be like, oh yeah, my character gets another skill. My character,
Mm,
has this ability that just kind of like triggers whenever I do this roll or whatever. And then also some things where it's like, oh, I want to add a new bullshit mechanical currency to my character, or like, oh, I want to be able to like make these choices because I did start playing with D&D,
mm.
and I, a fool, uh, chose to play a wizard as my friend. I don't think I
Oof.
wouldn't have liked it no matter what, because for me, um, I am kind of averse to playing games where like that more kind of traditional GMs, like
Mm,
everybody's playing an individual character thing, because I get really uncomfortable having to take initiative in
mm,
real life and playing
mm.
characters. So I kind of but okay, that's neither here nor there. But anyways, I picked a wizard and I hated leveling up. The worst thing to happen was when I had to level up, because I had to pick new spells and I didn't care about any of the spells because they're all just like do damage, or like they're all so boring. And like I'm sure, like I know that some people really like playing wizards and they really like having all of that stuff, but for me it was just exhausting, and I
Mm.
hated having that list. And I mean, I would have hated combat no matter what, but like I especially hated, so like I really want to have somebody be able to just be like, nah, this is it. Like I'm not worrying about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like um, also being able to like play with a bunch of different cool mechanics and be able to like set things into motion in that way.
Yeah, totally. Wow, wizard as your first character ever in D&D is a you went into hard mode.
Well, like the thing is, they say like, oh, you should play a character that's like like to
Yeah,
start out role playing, and like I was a little baby and I didn't know, and I didn't know what mechanics were at that
right.
point. I had to learn. I was thrown in the deep end.
Yeah.
And then of course I made a wizard that was like, oh, I really want to have a character who like doesn't want to fight. She like wants to learn things. She knows all
Mm.
these languages because she wants to like talk to people. And then like D&D was like, fuck you. That's not how this game works.
Get out of here, nerd, with your books. Go kill a goblin. What are you doing?
Horrible.
Um,
And
but
nobody can say get a better DM, because DM was great. That group was great. Most of them are like, I'm still friends with them. Not that the people who I'm not, like we just don't talk. Like there was no bad blood between anyone
right.
there. Like it was just,
Yeah.
like that was a good group. Stop being mean to Katie. She's doing her best.
Oh, I'm sure she
No,
is.
not really. It's just whenever I complain about D&D and somebody's like, actually, you should just get a better DM. I'm like, how dare you say that
Right.
about Katie? She is great.
Yeah. Don't assume. You don't know Katie.
she's in
Get out of
graduate
here.
school now. She's
She's
really busy.
she's
She's trying her
nailing it.
best.
Right. Um, yeah. I want to ask you something else about the resistance system because
Please do.
I can't remember from the stuff that you've shown me if you have it in your how do you pronounce the acronym? Because I can't possibly say Full Metal
Oh,
Alchemist
oh,
every
oh.
single time.
I say
FMAB?
FMAP.
FMAB instead of FMAB. That makes more sense.
Yeah, I don't know what the general. It is really funny. Because so I'm in pharmacy school,
Right.
and a big uh just thing that everybody hates in all of our classes is there are these like kind of newer drugs called monoclonal antibodies, and they're super annoying because they're used for a bunch of different things. And so like a lot of the times when you look at a drug, the ending, you can be like, oh, that says a law, that's a
Mm.
beta blocker. Cool, that's easy. But with MABs, oh, they all end with MAB. And because monoclonal antibody, it's an acronym.
Gotcha.
And they do a bunch of different things, and they all have annoying names that like don't. They're just like random letters, basically. They're just sounds, and so it's so hard to remember what they do, and we all hate them. And it's just very funny to me that I'm working on a game called FMAP because
Right.
I'm like, yeah, FMAPs.
Mabs. Mabs are the worst.
But like,
Um,
also shout out to them, curing cancer and whatever. That's good.
okay, yeah,
Can't complain
okay.
too much.
Then good on you, Mabs. Um, I can't remember. In your game, do you have beats? Did you put beats in your game as like because that wasn't Inspire, and so it's
Yeah,
not in the SRD, but it shows up in Heart. And the
yeah. So
second I saw beats, I was like, "This is my life. This is all I've ever wanted in life was this." So, is it? Do you have
so
that?
I don't have beats as written. I should also say I definitely mostly have my mechanics from Heart. Like it's a
Mm,
simplified version of Heart more than it is the SRD. I did take some stuff from Spire and add it back in, but it's mostly Heart.
mm,
Like I use the way that Heart does like Fallout rolls and stuff because I think it's way better.
mm.
Um, I don't have beats as written because I instead basically kind of took a little bit of beats and I took a little bit of the kind of same ish thing that Spire does, where you have the refresh actions.
Right.
And then I said they don't really have any good stuff for bonds, so I'm going to kind of roll all of that into one. And so it's more of a bond mechanic where I think did I send this to you? I think I did.
I think you did.
Um,
Yeah, you sent me your bonds tech. Your bonds tech was
yeah,
very
so
cool.
basically like the really quick way of how it works is with each character, with each like PC, you have a desire, which is something you either like want from or for them. And when you kind of resolve that in whatever way that means, it could be like, oh, I got the thing I wanted, or it could be like the person refused to give me the thing I wanted, or something in between.
Mm,
You refresh stress.
right.
That's basically like a super simplified version. So I do really like beats, but I don't want to also have that as the like the advancement thing
Mm,
because basically if like let's say you're playing in a group, like with a GM and like four players, you're gonna have every person is going to have three desires
mm.
that they're trying to keep in mind. And like it feels like a beat would just be another thing added on top of that where like
Yeah.
I like that's my big thing about this is like really trying to like balance the cognitive load of like, okay, what's going to be like narratively really important in your mind and what can you just have on your sheet. You're just like, oh yeah, I have this.
Right.
So that is the thing. I haven't figured out how I want to do advancement yet. But that's kind of why I'm not doing beats.
That makes sense. Yeah, because the reason I like beats is because it's everybody's like this is my buy-in. This is the thing that I want to do. But you have that represented in
Yeah,
other tech in the game. So including one more thing, exactly like you said, that's a thing that like the players are on the lookout for, but also like kind of the point of beats is to like tell the GM like I
yeah,
want to see this in the game, so put this in the game. So like that's also one more thing that they've got to be doing. So I think it makes sense with how you have the bond tech going on to not put in beats, at least as they are written. Um, but I don't know. I don't know how you're gonna do advancement. Advancement's so
yeah.
tricky. Like advancement for me, like sometimes I'm so hand wavy about it. I'm just like, I don't know. When you're done, advance. When you're done with the session, advance. I don't
I mean,
care.
that's basically what Spire does. Like, it's just like I don't know when you feel like it.
Yeah, and it's so open to interpretation. It's like whenever you made a change to the city, take an advance, depending on how impactful that change was. You're like, well, what the hell does that mean? And then you just kind of like talk about it as a group. Um,
Yeah, I do really like that. I probably will end up either just taking that whole clause and just be like, there we go, or kind of taking it and making it a bit more concrete. We'll see.
yeah,
I
I
do
mean,
like that though.
I think it's cool because then you all get to like you do the thing, whatever the thing is, the loop in your game is, and then you all get to say like, all right, like how big of a deal was that? Like, how, and then that's cool too, because then you can like as a table discuss with the GM and like discuss as a group. Like, how does it feel? Like, did we do a big thing, or like is this the thing that's like
Yeah.
setting us up to do the even bigger thing? So we get like the smaller advance now, but now we can go get like that big thing. I think it's neat instead of just like how I usually do it, which is just at the end of the mission, just get more stuff and then just figure it out. But I do
I
like
mean, I think it is kind of that, right? But it would be added on like based on how big it is,
right,
more or
exactly.
less.
For me, it's just always like, just get more stuff. Get more stuff. Stuff is good.
So I just did have a thought, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering if this is anything, or if I this might be something that I'd want to try out in something smaller first.
Mm-hmm.
But I am thinking about something that's like vaguely like reverse beats, or almost like a BOB kind of thing, where like if there's a push and pull, where like what if you could just decide to take an advancement at any time, but then like that kind of that kind of like you gave something to the GM to be like, okay, now this, and like because I have this advancement, like people know about me more, or like
Oh shit, this is good. This is good. Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. So like you have a list of advances, things that you can take, and then oh, fuck, that's really good. I have, it's all like hitting me in waves now in terms of how to like pull that off. But like, do you think it's the sort of thing that you would like choose kind of similar to beats, like at the beginning of a session? Like you choose your advance at the start of the session and then like
yeah, I don't
like
know.
you
I
sort
don't
of
know
like
how exactly it would work.
earn the advance after the fact? Because that's kind of interesting. That's interesting tech.
I don't know, or it could even be like tied to fallouts. Like whenever you get a major
Mm.
fallout, you can take an advance. I don't know, right?
That,
Because I was thinking about it and I was like, maybe that's too much like fallout, where like a a kind of bad quote thing happens.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's they even write it in the SRD of like once players see what fallouts are, they'll start chasing them, which I think is generally true. When I've played resistance games, like my players just lean into it's not gonna go well for them generally.
Mhm.
And so like fallout is just an inevitability rather than something to like avoid. And that's why like some of the I don't have heart nearby, but like some of the beats in heart are like get major fallout in
Mhm.
blank because they're like, yeah, you should go chase this sometimes. So I think there is something to the idea of just like connecting it to Fallout so that people really chase that disaster scenario. I mean, it kind of depends on the vibe of the game that you're going for.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want constant disasters, then maybe don't do this. But
Yeah, the thing is, I still haven't really figured out how I want to portray major fallout. So now this is definitely having me like ideas. I'm like, maybe that would work. Because like I have like minor fallout is more or less the way that the way that minor fallout works in like
right,
Heart or Spire. But I kind of I'm like, FMAP doesn't really have major fallout in that way. Where like it has severe fallout,
right.
but it doesn't really have that like middle ground of like a big thing has happened to you and now you have to deal with it, which
Mm,
I'm kind of going back and forth between like, but maybe it should, versus like maybe I want to portray this differently. So that's definitely something to think about. It also reminds me of like forever ago I just had this like random idea and never did anything with it, of like what if progression in a Forge in the Dark game was tied to filling up, like was tied to getting like a trauma or a scar or whatever.
right.
um so I think it's maybe similar to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when I've played so many Blades campaigns. Um, it's just it ends up being the game that I run the most. And once players realize that one of the XP triggers at the end of a session is having problems with your vice or trauma, they then go get a trauma. Like they don't get it the first session, but they're like, "Oh,
Everybody's doing it.
I need one of these if I want experience." And so they go get one and so that they can like run into problems with it in the future, ongoing future. So I think like just making
Kids
that
these days.
yeah, they intentionally run into the trouble. Like it's but like if that's one of the XP triggers, then like there should just be stuff in there that is like, yeah, when you get a trauma, this interesting cool thing happens to you. Because clearly John intended for people to get stress and trauma in the game
Yeah.
based off of how it's written. So like make it happen. Just make that the
Why not
overt
just cut
thing.
out the middleman?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, Dan Phipps is here. You got to sleep in this morning. That's great. What with your kids let you sleep? What a gift to you, Dan. What a gift. Um, cool. The one other thing I wanted to ask you about with resistance is how you're doing your your role, like the core role. Because I can't remember how what you've settled on. Because like the core role is like D10s with skill plus domain, and then Spire and Heart do it differently depending on if you have like the difficulty aspect in terms of like, are you removing? Did you
Oh,
know
there's
that
different.
they're different?
Wait,
So
okay, I might not know how Spire does it then.
Spire removes dice ahead of time from the pool. Heart removes your
Oh,
highest rolled dice, which is
okay.
worse.
Worse,
I
yeah.
and
I didn't know that.
they intentionally call this out of like we've Heart is supposed to be much gnarlier than Spire. So like you roll your pool and then you get the best things taken away from you, as opposed to Spire where like if it's difficulty 1, you just lose one of the D10 in the pool, but you still get to keep the highest.
Mm. Huh, I'm kind of torn on that because I've obviously been doing it as like the way that Heart does.
Right.
Um, and I feel like definitely in tone, this game is gonna be more like Spire than Heart. So I'm gonna have to think about that. But I do like the way that Heart does it in the sense that it's different, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a it's not just like, oh, you add dice and then you take them away. It's like, oh, you add dice and then you roll them and then it kind of feels like separated in that way. But I
Yeah.
definitely had some stuff where one of the problems I've been running into with resistance system is that I want to be able to give multiple kind of rewards to be like, oh, you're good at this thing.
Mm.
But really the only one that I can give is mastery or
Hmm.
reducing difficulty. Um, and I don't think that like would solve it, but it's definitely interesting to think about. See, like I know there's a game. Oh my god, what is it called? Our Stormy Presence, which kind of combines them, where like there's like sometimes like most of the time you're just taking the dice away, but then sometimes if it's like, ooh, this is like a problem for your character, then you're doing it the hard way, which is kind
Mm.
of interesting.
That's interesting. I I I think I tend to prefer the Spire route, but I think the Heart system for rolling creates like an interesting story in it because you roll the dice, you see like the two best if it's a difficulty 2, and then you see them taken away. And you can then like kind of incorporate that into as you're like describing the like results of the roll as like
Yeah, yeah. It's like
you
you almost got it
you
and you
almost got it.
desperately failed.
And then something happened. Like you were on track to make this thing happen, and then it just fell away
Yeah.
from you. Like that's kind of cool that you can see the story of that with Heart as opposed to Spire. It's like the opportunities are taken away from you like invisibly ahead of time, and now we just see how you handle
Yeah.
the thing. Um, I like them both. I don't know. Of course, I don't like either of them fully. I've sliced and diced Resistance down to what I prefer the game to be, but
Yeah.
uh,
I'm such a huge you already know this, but I'm such a huge fan of the way that you've done resistance. Like one day I'm gonna do my bullshit, what if you had a bunch of different die sizes thing.
yes, do that.
It's fun. I've got I should go back to that. It's so fun to think about. Like um so I think the way that I want to do it at this point is um I haven't exactly decided how I want Fallout to work, because I know that you just have it where like um, you roll all your dice, they're all d6s,
Mm,
and then you look at the highest one, and that kind of does everything. It says,
mm,
like if it's a success, success with stress, or a failure, and then you also look at it for Fallout, which I
right.
think is really elegant.
Thank you.
But what I also really want to do is have stress and like success measurement be separate, right? So
Mm,
like you
hmm.
can, because I think the thing that kind of gets me is like I really want that partial success a lot of the time,
Yeah,
and like it doesn't really give it to me. It's just kind of like, oh, you have a success with stress, or you have a regular success, or it's a failure with stress, and like there isn't like I really want there to be a failure without stress option, you
sure.
know,
Yeah,
which I don't think people would use probably a lot in the way that I would do it anyways, because like that have to be like a really interesting choice to do. But basically, the way that it would work is you roll your dice, and then you would look at the two highest,
mm,
and you would get to choose like, okay, which one of these is the like success measurement and which one of these says stress. So it would be like
yes.
oh, Let me find it. Let me find
I'm
the
all for,
where.
I'm all for this. I love that sort of tech where you're plugging in the dice into. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know because then later you were talking about your like grid
That
thing, and I was
weird
like, oh,
grid
it's
thing.
the
Yeah,
same. It's
yeah,
the same.
exactly.
Um, I guess I was gonna try to find like the numbers because it's kind of weird because I was basing it off of a D8, I think, right? Because like you'd be able
Mm,
to use all those dice, but basically it's like there's critical failure, failure, success, critical success for both um things, and it's like okay, so if you get on the stress side, it's like take 2 stress if it's a critical failure, take 1 stress if it's a regular failure, no stress if it's a success, and then heal a stress if it's a critical success. And then
mm,
on the result side, it's just like regular, how you would think of those, in
right.
effect. And so like you can say like, oh well, we got 2 failures, but I want the critical failure to be the stress and the regular failure to be an action. Or you'd be like, let's do it the other way. Let's see how that goes.
I think that tech is so cool. I love that so much. And um I'm trying to like the first time I saw stuff like that was in Goblinville, which I don't know if you know. I think I might have it here.
I don't know if I've read it, but I've definitely heard of it.
I'm never gonna find it in time, but it's in this box. Oh wait, I did find it immediately after I said that. I'm so good at things. Goblinville, the Goblinville Gazette, where they had this whole thing of you would roll your dice and then it was a I think yes, so resolving actions it's real small text here, so I don't even know why I'm bothering to show it. But basically, you roll 2 dice and one of them is the success or failure range of the action, and then the other range is the existence of danger manifesting as a result of you
Mm,
doing it. So like danger shows up or doesn't show up. And so you can kind of create the 2 by 2 grid of like success, but yeah, now there's danger. Or I'd rather fail and no danger show up, or all the possible combinations. Um, I love I love that kind of tech. I think it's cool. Um, anyway, I love the resistance system, and I'm so glad that I found somebody who also loves the resistance system and will nerd
yeah,
out
yeah.
about it with me.
It's so funny because like I like vaguely heard of it for like forever, like since I got into game design. God, it's actually very funny because like way back when I was a little game design baby in like early 2019, I wrote The Right Starts, which is my Hades Town inspired game where you do a revolution in hell. It's pretty good,
Nice.
IMO. And I was like at the time, I mean, I still think that it's good, but at the time I was like especially proud of it, like the system that I'd created. And I was like, man, I'd like love for people to like hack this. Like
Mm.
I should come up with like a little slogan name for it. And so in a game design Discord I'm in, I was like, oh, what if I called it Sparked by the Riot? Or no, Started by the Riot. And someone in there, probably Ruby Soleil Rain, shout out to her, who like coined the term Sparked by Resistance and wrote Ascendancy, which is a really cool Resistance game. It was probably her. I don't. It's been forever. It was like, oh, that's actually like the exact, like that's the same, like SBR. That's already a thing. And I was like, oh my
Oh
god, not only is it
no.
a thing, but it's the same meaning. It means the same
Right.
thing as mine.
That's weird. That's very
Yeah,
bizarre.
it was very funny.
Life is
Um,
life is funny that way.
and like I'd heard of it forever, I just never bothered to like read, which I think I'm glad about because I do like a lot of the mechanics in Heart better than Spire. Like I think I
Mm.
would have felt a little bit more overwhelmed by Spire because it's like, remember, if you got a regular Fallout, then that's clear 3 stress. If it's a clear 5,
Mm.
and it's like that's so many numbers. It's so like
It's
I really
so
do like the
many.
Heart like elegant like minor Fallout, clear the track. Major Fallout, clear everything. Like
Yeah.
that's so mwah. You love to see it.
Yes. Yes. I'm glad that they like streamlined some things with heart.
Yeah. Also,
Uh,
I really like protection over like the resistance slots.
yeah,
That's a big one too.
that is good. That's good tech. Um, Riley, can I get your opinion on something? On a mark out idea that I have that I think I briefly told you about.
Yeah, like with factions.
Yes, because I
I'm
want.
very excited to hear about it.
I opened up the document last night because I was like, all right, I'm talking to Riley tomorrow. Maybe I should do some like stuff ahead of time. And I was like, actually, I should do this after I've talked with Riley to just to see what manifests. So
Hell yeah.
I think mark out is very cool. Um,
Thanks.
for folks who aren't familiar, Riley made a game called Mark Out, and it's inspired by like the loyalty program cards, right? I think that's what you've like
Yeah.
kind of like. Did you put it for Business Card Jam? Is that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah?
Yeah.
So like a loyalty card at a restaurant where like you buy 10 meals or 9 meals, the 10th meal is free, sort of thing. It was that. Each card is a character, like a wizard or a fighter, and you have like in real life things that you're supposed to go do. And when you do those things, you're marking like the loyalty points that eventually you all cash them in to fight the big monster at the end. It's really cool. So like you're going and living your life outside, doing things and like keeping track of like the little stuff that you're doing, and then you get together and do like a cool fight. I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
I
If anyone is listening to this and thinking like, "Wow, I should play this," go read it. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool concept. Probably not actually playable because I did write it in 3 hours, like in a fugue state, and like I don't think like the mechanics aren't balanced enough because like it is like it is a tactical game in that way. I don't, but I think it's cool, and you like Spencer should go write your own thing that's actually good, inspired by it. That was
so
kind of my goal with it. I'm like, listen, this isn't gonna work, but like I think it's cool. I think it's a cool idea to put out in the world.
I'm in a major faction turn kick right now in my design
Oh,
space.
really?
Yeah. I think I'm just gonna become a board game designer at this point because this is what I do. Um, but so I've between that and I have been rewatching The Sopranos because I hadn't
Of course.
watched them since they first came out like forever ago. And so I was like, how can I take Riley's mark out and combine it with this idea that I love about like a crime because I love crime games. I make crime games all the time. So how can I make a crime family style thing? And I imagine a scenario in which you all have your cards and that's you are like a member of the family, the organization, the whatever crime group you are. You're going out and you're doing your things. We'll talk about that in a second. But then the important thing is you come back together, and in Mark Out, you come back together and you fight a monster, right? Like that's the premise.
Yeah.
Um, rather than like fighting a monster because you're a mob family or whatever,
You are the
you
monster.
are the monster. And like a dragon, you want to hoard and gather more stuff. Meaning,
Right. I mean, to be clear, the monster is capitalism. It always is.
right, exactly. So like I wanted to try and combine the mark out tech of the individual like going out playing your lives with like a really small scale like faction turn-esque thing where you come together as a family and it's like the weekly check-in where you're like giving your payouts to the boss and then like
That would be
discussing
cool.
like what are we going to do about X, Y, and Z. Um, I haven't figured out how that second part works. Like I'm pretty confident that I could write the cards part about like the different members of the family because they would be like involved in like different types of like crime essentially. And that part I feel semi comfortable in. But I have no idea what this like coming together part looks like exactly. Other than I want it to kind of feel like I don't know. It's not like faction tourney because there's no other factions. You're the only gang or you're the only like mob family, I guess, unless we like come up with tech that involves another one. So I haven't figured this out, but I just want to know if this sounds like I'm on to something or if this is like if anything is vibing with you where you're like this seems like this could work or like helping me anticipate problems or anything like that.
Yeah. It's really cool. I guess I when you told me about it, I was imagining that you were each playing different factions, like you were each a different crime family,
Right.
or like at least you were kind of scheming against each other along with um so like I don't think it wouldn't work with the way that you're talking about, but that's just not how I was thinking about it. I also don't know anything. I have never watched The Sopranos. I've probably watched a video essay or two about The Sopranos, but that's about it. And I haven't really watched, not like I'm not against it. I don't think I've really watched a lot of like crime family shows. I'm trying to think. I mean, Black Sails is kind of that.
I
They're like
tried
the
to
main
watch that
crime.
last night and then I realized I need a Stars account. And I was like, well,
Yeah,
this ruins everything.
yeah, I know. I'm sure there's a way to. I mean, there's got to be a way to pirate it,
You're
right?
right.
Um, but yeah, I'm trying to think of like what it would look like because it's hard for me because I don't know exactly like what you're imagining because I haven't seen the
I barely
Sopranos.
know what I'm imagining
Um,
too.
but I think it could be right like where you're each you each have kind of like different, like there's three different kind of like mechanical currencies, right? There's
Mm.
like the I don't know. God, what
So,
what even
oh,
what is their crime? What's the crime that they do?
well, I mean, so I mean, they do a lot of things. It's like
How does the
extortion,
mob work?
right? It's like extortion, so like protection money. It's like
Right, right.
gambling.
Okay.
But like, to give you a little bit more, but um, because in Markout there's like the two tracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have like two tracks that people get. Like one is about increasing die sizes ultimately, and the other one is like the resource that people can spend to like do their cool stuff. Um, so I imagine kind of two tracks. One is like the money you've earned because
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have to earn and you have to pay up to the boss. That's one of the like the key themes. And so like I think you have like a minimum amount you're supposed to like earn throughout the week. So that's an interesting idea. The other thing is like instead of like a die size going up, you get dice that will like we kind of like plug into like a fake map that like rolls to like manifest things. Again,
Ooh.
no idea what that looks like, but I like this
Yeah.
idea of like you have like worked hard that week and so you've like exerted more influence and so you have more say over what the family does that week. But
Oh. Oh, no, you go.
so and but I still have no idea what that looks like in terms of like you have no adversary right now because you all are just like together. Um, which is why you have said this and somebody else said it on stream of like you should either all be the same family but competing against each other
Yeah.
or like be rival families and just lean into like you are each a different faction sort of thing.
I am having trouble like just because like I think in a game where you're not really where the focus of it isn't like trying to accumulate the stuff, I think you could really easily make an interesting game where it's like, oh, you're all part of the same family, you're all trying to
Right.
work together because like, there's definitely ways to do that. It could be a GM-less game and people are like, oh, hey, this is what I think the problem is. And then everyone's like, cool, hell yeah, let's work on this problem.
Right.
But in a game where you are like trying to win in that way, I think there does have to be some kind of adversary. Also, I did think since you said a map, I thought of some bullshit. It might be too complicated, but I had to put this out there, especially as the resident beat liker. I gotta tell you, um, okay, because you're talking about like a map. What if all of the different places on the map they were like coordinates, and each of the coordinates has so like, instead of it being like, oh, you get to put a die on the map when you do this thing as like your class, the way that you get money. What if it was like coordinate focused? So like each space has a different thing that you have to do. And so like
Mm,
you maybe even like in a beat way, right? Like at the end of the session where you all come together, you say like, okay, next week I'm gonna try to get like, A4 and B6. And you like write down the things you gotta do. And if you do them, then you can like have a claim for it. And then like maybe there's some kind of mechanic if multiple people have a claim for it.
oh shit. Oh, that's very cool. Oh, wait a minute. That's very cool. Okay. Okay. My brain's going too fast and like on fire to try and figure out how to word this, but I will process this. I will digest that because I think that is very cool. I think that is a good, interesting direction to go. I think like in general, leaning into like the at least like adversarial family members or like just straight up competing factions is probably the thing that will make it easier in the first place for me to do this than how I've
Yeah,
imagined
right.
it
Like
in my
my
head.
first thought is like there's gotta be like you gotta have the option to like be able to team up with somebody else and be like, we're gonna take down this boss. Be like, neither of us are gonna give our money, we're gonna like do this other power that we have.
Right. Yeah. The other thing that I want to do with it is because with how markout is written on each side of the business card, you have the rules of markout because ostensibly each person's supposed to be able to carry this around and have the rules to it. I'm not going to do that because I'll just have like a little one-page rule sheet. So the other side I think is like a place where you can have like personal stuff. So like your cash that you've stowed away or your
Mm-hmm.
personal goals and like things that you want to accomplish. Like you've got all that on one side plus like your tracks that you're doing, your things on the other side. And you have this big coordinate map. Ooh, okay. Okay, I think we're getting there. This is good. This is good.
Yeah, I do really like the map idea because like then you can kind of have you can characterize stuff more. You can be like, oh, here's the different sections of the city. Like,
Right.
maybe you start out with like, this is like my turf, and then you can like try to expand. You can try to maybe you can like enhance the like you can pay to like enhance your squares and stuff.
See, it's gonna turn out a lot like the Nova faction turn, which is totally fine with me. But instead of us like planning it out and playing it like a board game, it'll be like you go do your in real life loyalty program card and then come together and cash that in every week. And I think that's cool.
God, I'm so obsessed with the idea of somebody like having the card being like, "Oh, I just won an argument. Better check off things." And someone's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" You're like, "Oh, I'm trying to kill my brother." Kind of
Yeah,
do this.
trying to become the extortion king in this town.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm just trying to help my mob.
Right. It's a
Bribe the
racketeering
mayor.
thing.
No big deal.
It's a need to know sort of thing. Don't worry about it. Um, okay, cool. I think this is what I'm gonna work on this week now, because
Oh yeah.
this is burning in my brain. Amazing. Super cool. Um, well, Riley, I'm like out of coffee, and we've hit like an hour, which is usually how long we go for these sorts of things. I mean, this is only the third time, so there's no precedent, but this feels like a good precedent. Um, Anything else that you wanted to like really talk about? Was there anything like itching in your brain or anything like that?
Hmm. I mean, if we're just gonna go for an hour, that we don't have to have a whole thing about it. But I was thinking earlier about you talking about the way that the heart rolls,
Mm,
where like you can see the story happening
yeah.
because you like have this thing that's canceled out. That's actually something I was thinking about yesterday
Okay.
about like something that I really not that specifically. So that was really interesting that you pointed that out. But I really like in games where you have like I really like pick lists
Mm.
because you have kind of the evocativeness. I don't think is a word. I don't know what the word. Not evocation. That's not it.
I feel like
But like
evocativeness is good enough of a word.
you have the story is created not only by what you choose but also what you don't choose.
Right.
So like you can and like the interesting thing about it also is that you don't have to it can mean different things, right? Like you can pick three things from a list and the rest of them are just there. And that can mean, so I actively do not have these things, right?
Hmm.
I have chosen that I am, cunning and popular, and I have not chosen courageous. So that means that I'm a coward,
Mm.
right? Or you can look at that and be like, these are other possible options that I have. Like I chose that I have, a beautiful dress and, uh, you know, a hat stolen from a rich person. I don't know.
Hmm.
And I don't have a gleaming gold watch, but I do have a silver watch. Whatever.
Right.
So like there's and I really like the way that I feel like I had another example. Also with like PBTA moves. I really like pick lists and PBTA moves too,
Mm.
where it's like, if a move says, you know, on a 10 plus choose two, on a 7 9 choose one. The options are like you take extra damage. That's not a good one. I no. Um, it's like the you get an extra bonus.
Right.
Um, you're not tricked.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, if you choose that first one, maybe you're gonna be tricked, maybe not. But now it's like, hold on, am I gonna be tricked?
Right. Exactly. I love that sort of stuff. I don't have it in any games now that I think about it, but I love pick lists. I loved Jay was Jay Dragon was talking about putting together the pick list for Wanderhome and just like
Mm-hmm.
the power of pick lists and their role in like creating the world and everything like that. And
Yeah, that's another thing, definitely.
I had never put like too much honestly like too much thought into pick lists before, and then Jay writes this thing out and I'm like, "Oh, I see. These are very powerful and cool. Very
Yeah.
neat tech." Um,
Yeah, definitely that's another thing where it's like, oh, I don't have this thing, but that means someone like me could have this thing.
mhm.
Or like this is a thing like I didn't pick the option about, the king of the floating mountain, but now I know that the king of the floating mountain exists
Somewhere out there,
in the
right.
world.
Exactly. It's super
Or
cool.
maybe it means they don't, right? You could say, oh, well, I didn't pick that one, so I don't think they exist. Like, I
Yeah.
don't even want to have no kings.
And there's that cool flexibility with that where you can say like you can kind of talk about that as a group of like pick lists, are they things that have just simply not manifested yet or are or not relevant in the spotlight right now, or are we by omitting them saying these don't exist? And I think each of those is a cool and very different approach to creating characters, creating worlds. I love it. It's cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Also, Kazumi Chin recently did like a little thread about like because there was a tweet, I guess, that was like an exam question that was like, "What's something you studied for this exam that wasn't on here? Explain it." Which I think is a really great thing. Because I've definitely taken tests where I'm like, I cannot believe
Right,
I
why
spent an
isn't this
hour
on here?
learning that thing and it's not on here, right? But obviously, also like if you don't have anything like, or if you can't think of something, like that would suck. And Kaz was like, "Oh well, if you just had like four different options, of like
Mm-hmm.
here's some stuff that you could have studied that wasn't on here, or like write your own
Right.
thing. That would be like so much easier." And that's definitely a thing where it's like I really like pick lists. I really like pick lists when they like are, it's like okay, maybe I would have thought of something cool for this, but look at all these options, like, and then and then especially like because I'm often a contrarian by nature, so I will be like, I'm gonna pick this thing, but it means this thing instead.
Right. Pick lists for my tests in the future? Is this a thing? Can I take pick list tests, tech, and put it into my assessments? Can I just do that? I think
I
I could do that. I think that's
I don't
very
think anyone
good.
can stop you from
Nobody,
doing that.
literally nobody could. Nobody could. Um, okay. Wow. Okay, that's lighting my brain on fire for my actual job. Uh,
Hell yeah.
Neat. Oh, I'm glad that we went on and talked about this because that's very good. Um, awesome. Well, I think that feels like
God,
a
imagining like the the end of one of your assessments, like the way that like you have the credits at the end of a game being like, this test was inspired by.
right, exactly. Here's my appendix N for my tests. Here's all the things you need to know.
Thank you to my playtest. Thank you to
Right.
my playtesters.
My pl
Find my other tests at.
my playtesters are all the previous semesters who took the test before, and I learned how to make the test better. Um, Amazing. Uh, well, Riley, I feel like this is a good stopping point. This was great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for doing a coffee break with me.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
do you have any like plugs and stuff so that folks know where to find you on the internet?
Yeah, so you can find my games at metagame.itch.io. You can find my Twitter at Riley Rethal. The last L is technically a capital I, but like you should be able to find it without knowing that.
Let
Look
me.
out for FMAP game in like 2023. I don't know. I'm so busy with school, and this game is big, and like I don't know. Don't look for the occasional what is it, like a like preview post on my Twitter. Really,
Right. I dig them. I've been always digging the preview posts. So please
yeah.
do keep an
I'm
eye
pretty
out.
happy with how the game is going. So
Excellent. Well, folks, thanks so much for joining us for coffee break this week. We will be back same time next week. And I have the Drakes coming on. The Drake duo, Sean and Navi Drake, are going to come on and talk to me, which I'm very excited about. I've been digging a lot of the stuff that they've been making. Also, just like I don't know how they produce at the rate that they produce. It's ridiculous. So I'm very excited to have them on. Otherwise, I hope you all enjoy your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is you are, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
bye.